Boy, we look good, eh? Hey, look at that, eh? Big smile now, eh?
Can you tell me why? Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular meeting of council, 32-20 this evening. I'll call this council meeting to order. This time I'll go through my mayor's report. Tonight we are welcoming councillors Bagu, Bruno, Clayliff, and Wells into the council chambers. Also joining us are the CAO, Scott Louie, Clerk Amber Lapointe, Deputy Clerk Charlotte Madden, and a member of our WeeStream team live streaming this evening. Our other 4 city councillors and various city directors are all home attending via Zoom. Last week, the province brought out new classifications for public health units as we work to recover from COVID-19. Quantifiable metrics are now in place based on a number of new cases per 100,000 of population, with the protocols and restrictions different in each stage. Niagara is in the second, or yellow protect stage. We continue to work hard, so Niagara remains here and no further restrictions are put in place. Remember, the precautions you have taken over the past 6 months continue to save lives. We emphasize the need for social distancing, hand washing, face coverings where social distancing can't be maintained, or where required by the province's or region's face covering bylaw. We ask that you continue to support our local businesses and please stay diligent during this difficult time. With that said, the Downtown BIA has organized their Christmas open house for the coming weekend. Businesses will be decorated and ready to spread some Christmas cheer. The open house runs on Friday from 12 to 8, Saturday from 10 to 4, and they are encouraging you to wear your ugly sweater while you shop. That is their theme this year, the ugly sweater. I did a BIA video this past week, which is going to be up and running shortly, and I wore a great ugly Christmas sweater. So if we can get into that spirit. This coming Wednesday, we will be hosting our Remembrance Day ceremony, which is again going to be different this year. The public ceremony at the Cenotaph at H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park has been replaced by a private ceremony for Legion members only to be held inside their branch. The Legion will be live streaming the event on their Facebook page. The Legion has asked members of the public to please observe 2 minutes of silence at 11 a.m. on November the 11th in lieu of attending a ceremony. I would like to thank Michelle Mason, Assistant Curator at the Museum, for the great display we have in Council Chambers this evening, which is over to Council's right, which our WeeStream guy can show. I'll wait till he zooms in on that. Okay. This display recognizes a number of quite a number of people from Port Colborne that served in World War I. Victor Linden, and also a letter accompanying the picture, was sent to him in 1916 from the students at Welland High School. Mr. Linden enlisted in February of 1916 and was wounded on Vimy Ridge front near Lens, and was decorated by the Prince of Wales with the Military Medal for Gallantry in bringing in a wounded comrade under heavy gunfire. Also during the Great War, many women and men were members of the Junior Red Cross. You may recognize some of the surnames of Cross, Lewis, Shirk, Smith, Augustine, Sidey, Steele, and MacDonald as names that continue to live in our community. There were many brothers fighting side by side during the war. The Weegrich triplets, William, John, and James, were the only triplets on record as having borne arms in the cause of the Allies. John served with the Royal Flying Corps and completed his training with A Squadron in Toronto. James and William joined the 67th Battery and later transferred to the Forestry Corps. There's a drawing of the triplets in the Ripley's Believe It or Not newspaper accompanying that from after the Great War. Also, I did a video which is now posted today with regards to Remembrance Day. Again, we can't have our normal ceremony at the cenotaph where we have hundreds of young students, many members of the public that show up along with our Legion members and those that are still remaining from, I don't think too many. I think Legion told me there were 6 active members that actually fought in World War II. So those numbers are dwindling. I mean, that this year was the end, 75 years of the end of the Second World War. But we do have members of the Korean conflict and retirees from the armed forces, and also those that served in other theaters and peacekeeping across the world that still come out to our ceremony that's put on by the Legion. So in basically what I said today in my video is the fact that we can't host this, but if you have time this week, please stop by. You can lay a poppy on the cenotaph and take a moment of thought for those that gave their lives, or a bouquet of flowers. We look forward to those people that come. Already some people have put some items there already. There was a nice Canadian flag with some poppies on it from a local citizen. So please stop by, take a moment, and again, please social distance if you're there and there's more than you and your bubble. But if you can't watch on social or on the Facebook page, please stop by the cenotaph and pay your respects. We would appreciate that, and so would the Legion. So in closing, we ask for your patience while we work together and remain vigilant in fighting this virus. And our number one priority is the health and safety of our staff and our citizens here in Port Colborne. Again, please stay safe. Councillors, any questions with regards to the Mayor's report? I don't see any in chambers. Anyone on the line? Seeing none. Councillor Butters is here this evening. My understanding is she does not have a report. However, Councillor Butters, will bring her on. And if anybody has a question for the regional councillor, anyone on the line with a question for Councillor Butters? Welcome, Barb.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad to be here with you all. There isn't much to report tonight. You covered the COVID situation really well. Standing committees are meeting today and tomorrow, and I will be attending the Legion ceremony on November 11th, Branch 56, representing Chair Bradley. It's my privilege and pleasure to do that. So the other thing I would just quickly mention is there were a few hitches with the new garbage schedule. However, they seem to be getting worked out. I got a few calls in that first part, and I got to tell you, the staff were very responsive and seemed to be, on top of things. And I haven't gotten any calls this week, although it's still Monday. So we'll see what the rest of the week brings.
Great, thank you. Members of council in the chambers, any questions? Oh, Councillor Clayhoff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually wanted to talk to Councillor, the council regarding number 14 on the looking for regional help. But should I do that now or wait till I bring it up when we look at the numbers?
Councillor Butters, are you staying on for a whole meeting or no?
I can stay.
Okay, we can also move that ahead of
It's up to you.
schedule. Yeah, we can move that ahead. So Councillor Butters, Councillor Clayliff will have a question on one of our items on our docket, so we'll move that up the list, if that's okay.
Okay.
Anyone online with a question for the regional councillor? So it's item 14, Barb, so when that comes forward, we'll have staff bring you back on, okay?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, any addendum items this evening?
There are none this evening.
Can I have Councillor Clayliff and Councillor Bruno move confirmation of the agenda? Any questions with regards to the agenda? We will be moving item 14 and item number 8 a little earlier. I'll do those before theirs because of our presentation and with Councillor Butters being online. So no further questions. In favor of the agenda, please raise your hand. That's carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. So far, I have items number 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, and 14 by Councillor Clayliff. Further items, Councillor Wells? 6. Thanks.
Number 6, item 6, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, 4, just I want to highlight something there, and 8 and 14, sir.
8 and 14, yeah, they've been drawn.
Yep,
So,
sir.
okay. Any further items? Anyone online? Seeing none. We have one disclosure of interest this evening. Councillor Beauregard has declared a conflict of interest on item number 5, Planning and Development Department Report 2020-166, Subject Recommendation Report for Zoning Bylaw Amendment Nyan Oil, Inc., file D14-05-20. Any other conflicts? Anyone online? Anyone in the chamber? That's fine. I have one set of minutes. Councillor Bagu and Councillor Wells, if you could move that. The regular meeting of council 28-20 held on October 26, 2020. Any questions on those minutes? Anyone online? In the chamber? All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Approval of items not requiring separate discussion. Councillors Bodner and Desmarais, if they could move that. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. We have one presentation this evening. Christine Clark-Lafleur, Executive Director, Port Cares, will be providing a presentation regarding Port Cares, which is item 8, which is being brought forward this evening. We will deal with item 8 right after Christine speaks. Christine is here on our invite based on a question from Councillor Bagu at a previous meeting. Christine, welcome.
Great, thank you very much. I've just turned my video on here. Thank you. I believe Charlotte is going to advance the slides for me.
Yep,
So,
and she has those up right now.
Great, thank you. Okay, great to see everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to make this presentation this evening and clarify information and provide further details with respect to Port Cares and the application for funding. So Port Cares, our hallmark is providing help, hope, and opportunity. Next slide, please. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Some of the information will be very familiar to you, and then I'm going to fast forward to Port Cares today, what we do. I'm going to provide some context around the stark reality of the demographics of our community, and a few words on Port Cares' impact within the community, And then again, really focusing in on the reserves, reserve policy, standards for not-for-profits and charities when it comes to accountability, stewardship, and sustainability. Next slide, please. I always find it's important to sort of, to understand where we are today. It's good to inform ourselves on where we've been. When we look at Port Cares and we look at the community, really, we've got to go back to the late 1970s and the early 1980s here in Port Colborne. And many of the folks on council and your staff know this very well, with just the entire industrial sector collapse and really what happened 40 years ago. I have to think 50 years ago. Look at me, I'm trying to knock out a decade of my life. So again, the impact of that massive economic shift, really the remnants of that are still here with our community today. When you think about it, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but unemployment, no social or support services, again, the beginning of a legacy that I hope that in my lifetime I will see change, is the rapid rise in teenage pregnancy. And another legacy from the past that continues today is the rapid rise and the continuance in domestic violence. And again, this beginning of what became generational poverty for South Niagara. Next slide, please. So really, Port Cares, as many of you know, was founded as an entity in 1986 as a grassroots response to the epidemic of poverty and social chaos resulting from what happened in the economy. It was a couple years before the group of local citizens could get the agency up and running, and I must commend them for their insight and for the work they did to establish Port Cares as a response. Next slide, please. So let's fast forward to today. Where is Port Cares at in 2020? Well, as I mentioned, Port Cares is a registered charitable and not-for-profit corporation. It's governed by a skills-based volunteer board of directors. We operate as a comprehensive community social service hub, and I must tell you that your community remains the envy of many communities in Ontario, and if for not Canada, for being able to have the complexity of wraparound services. Port Cares itself is a large employer. We're about 50 employees and more than 100 volunteers outside of this time of COVID, when we're very restricted in interacting with our volunteers. Our budget, as COVID struck, was $3.6 million annually, plus another $500,000 in trustee funds we oversee for clients, and as well another $350,000 in incentive funds that we use for employment placements for employers in the community. We've got a number of different programs. I'll get into that later. But again, a mix of provincial and regionally funded programs, and then charity-based services. Next slide, please. Our mission. Our mission is to help those in our community with social and economic needs improve their quality of life. I have to give a shout out to the folks who founded the agency back in the 80s. The mission of the organization today is just a small tweak from what it was founded on. So the founders, the local founders of Port Cares, nailed it in getting it right for the agency and for the community. Next slide. Our vision. Our vision is what primarily speaks to me. Our vision is to provide help, hope, and opportunity for all in our community to achieve their potential. Help, hope, and opportunity. If you don't have a hand up, it's hard to have hope. If you don't have opportunity, it's hard to turn your life around. We see lives turned around every day, and it's because of that vision and our work towards it, and our work with our partners and our supporters. Next slide. Values. These values are the lifeblood of the agency. This is our North Star, are where we go to guide our work and the decisions that are made as an agency and how we interact on an individual basis. We provide help without judgment. That's a very powerful statement, help without judgment. We are all accountable to one another. And I think this particular value speaks to this whole discussion we're going to have about reserves. We treat everyone with respect. It doesn't matter what station in life you stand in, you come through our doors, you're going to be treated with respect. And just as importantly, we work collaboratively together, and there's plenty of evidence of that. Next slide, please. Our operating model, I think I had to draw this up with word perfect diagrams because it was really hard to explain to my mom when she was alive what exactly I was doing here at Fort Cares. We put the clients and the families in the middle of our service, and on the sort of the left side of the house, or that blue side, the interventional side, that's when life is really, really tough. You've broken up, you're out on your own, you've lost your job, you've got an addiction issue, you name it, you're going to have some problems. We've got the basic needs, whether it's food bank, trusteeship, homelessness prevention, and crisis intervention. The preventional side, the green side of the house, is once you get back up on your feet, we're going to help you with your parenting skills through our early on program. We've got a huge employment division, we've got training, we've got youth justice. So the whole dynamic is at any particular point, we know something can happen. Our whole goal is to get you back to where you're on your feet. And again, that is really enabled through the cascade of services we have and that mission to get people to be autonomous and whole. Next slide, please. So get a little more granular into our services we provide. This is, right now, it's provincially funded. The employment and training program is the particular program that is piloted right now through the province to a third-party US-based firm. So we're part of that pilot right now. But our employment services division, we work with just short of 600 people, or at least pre-COVID. And our goal was 600 individuals to help them with their job search, their repositioning for employment. This was a lot of one-on-one intensive job counseling. We would rack up 1,200 people a year that we would help with just light touch assistance for job search. We have another program for youth employment. We know that youth between 15 and 29 years of age are really the most underemployed and unemployed demographic. We have an intensive program to help youth who have particular barriers get up on their feet and try and get them into the workforce. Canada Ontario Job Grant, we have funds to be able to pay employers for training to get their staff, their people upskilled. Literacy and basic skills, that's one-on-one training and support for reading, writing, arithmetic, and digital skills. We actually lead the province through COVID right now in the work we're doing in literacy and basic skills. We didn't shut down through COVID. We could not shut down. We had to close our doors for a period, but we managed to pivot on March the 13th and continue to provide all of these services, for about 5 months remotely, but at the end of stage 2, at the end of July, we were back open. So that's a huge chunk of activity. Youth justice, we are one of the largest providers in Niagara. We're in youth court in St. Catharines and Welland, and we're working with youth 12 to 17 years of age who commit low-risk criminal offenses. The whole point of youth justice is, kids do dumb things. Let's give them the restorative justice opportunity so that they don't end up with a record when they can have this second chance program. And again, we're providing that service for youth right across the region. Next slide, please. Early on is play-based child development. Port Cares has had one of the first early on centers. In fact, it was one of the first services in 1986 when it was federally supported that was here in Port Colborne. But in the last year and a half, we've worked really hard to through a competitive procurement process. And I'm very proud to tell you that Port Cares is now the largest provider of early on services in all of Niagara. We have the biggest cohort. We're bigger than the Catholic School Board, the District School Board. Fax Niagara no longer provides the service. The Y, Bethlehem Place, we actually operate half of the program for the entire region. And the Seaway Mall site in Welland was a pilot. We were able to take that pilot, show tremendous success, and now it's one of the most busiest centers in all of Ontario. So very important for that 0 to 5, giving kids their best start when it comes to brain development, motor skills, literacy, and socialization. Next slide, please. And then client services. The Region of Niagara funds us for homelessness prevention, which is actually a financial trusteeship. So for individuals who have low literacy, low capability to manage their household finances, we make sure their rents get paid, their utilities get paid, and they have counseling with how to budget. The whole point behind that program is to keep people from being evicted. And again, these are individuals with significant barriers who are either on ODSP, OW, or minimum income. Transitional housing, again, individuals to keep them housed. We have Niagara Regional Housing supports, and we have about 35 rental units that we're assisting people in maintaining housing. Assertive Street Outreach, this is a new program for us right at the outbreak of COVID. So we actually have workers out in the field going to camps and working part of a more regional model. Now the next list of services are all the charity services. So these are all the programs that we seek fundraising for, and grants and donations. So the food bank, the meal program, a kids lunch program for school-age kids, crisis intervention, and then in partnership with the Niagara Regional Police on the Portal Initiative. Next slide, please. So those charitable services, so everything's a moving target right now, let's face it, with the pandemic, but these services are funded again through grants, donations, fundraising. It's around $270,000 a year that is required to run the bare bones staff of the Reach Out Center and keep everything fully serviced. So there's a food bank there, a meal program 3 times a week, crisis intervention, different family support programs like Christmas program, back to school, community navigation, again, people in crisis, getting them the help that they need, and other seasonal programs. Next slide, please. So I didn't check my numbers today, so this may have gone up. It is going up. It's going up every week. It's gone up by about 300 and change since the pandemic hit. So as of, this was 2 weeks ago, there were 1,616 verified low-income users of the food bank. We're typically distributing 20 to 24,000 pounds of food a month. That's probably going to go up. Out of that 1616, we have 516 people registered to come for the meals 3 times a week. Now, let me caveat it, not 516 don't come every day for the meal. It's running right now about 70, 80. We used to see about 50, but we are seeing it go up. And again, a third of these individuals are kids under the age of 14. So again, I cannot stress enough that we rely on donations, fundraisings, and grants. There is no government money, not a penny for this service. Let me be clear. The only government money we've seen for this service this year was the gracious folks at the Township of Wainfleet early in the outbreak sent us about $3,500, and then they just sent a little bit more, I think about a month and a half ago. Next slide, please. So, you know, let's talk about what we don't want to talk about. People don't want to hear this. And it won't be the last time you hear it from me, because this is generational. We have low levels of higher education. If you want a decent job, you got to have more than high school. In Port Colborne, by census data, it continues to be that the highest level of education attained for the majority of residents is high school. High school gets you a minimum wage job in 2020. Another demographic that you really have to take a look at here is we've got the highest reliance in this population on government as a sole source of income. And again, that makes sense, right? For old age security, we're an older population, but it's also ODSP and OW. That's not new, that's historic. We've got lower wage earnings, lower household income here. The last census, showed us that. And again, our older population. And here's a public health bulletin. And I brought this forward. It's outside of the realm of Port Cares in our mandate. But for as long as I hold this role, I'm going to tell anybody who will dare listen that we have a really high level of risk behaviors for pregnant women in this community. And when I say that, I say violence, I say drug abuse, I say just poor health equity. And again, the numbers may not be huge, but for every child that's born with deficits, whether it's fetal alcohol or because of some sort of drug addiction, it's one too many in any community. So again, by the census, we have the highest percentage of individuals in the region living in the lower quadrants for income. Again, 15.7% versus 14.5% for Niagara as a whole, and 9% for Ontario. Again, these numbers come out of the census data. Next slide, please. So you asked me to come here to talk about program reserves. So I need to put this into context. Port Care's provincial and regional contracts are all on 1 year or 3 year commitments. They run either January 1 to December 31, or they run April 1 to March 31. In the time I've been here, I must tell you, it's not been unusual that on March 30th, I find out for April 1 that my contract's renewed. Kind of scary. In the business world, you wouldn't work with those vendors, but this is just the way it is. We compete through competitive RFPs, so requests for proposals, for the contract work that we do. Port Cares has grown its portfolio in the last 6 years. Again, it was competitive RFP that brought us all of the early on programs that we got, and it was competitive RFP that made Port Cares one of the only social service agencies this past year to increase its portfolio in housing and homelessness. It's tough out there, folks. It is tough. But you know what? Our community needs these services, so we're going to work hard to get them. So again, should we not get those contracts, we have to have a program reserve to be able to pay out severance and wind down costs. So our program reserve is a restricted fund. Nobody can touch it. It is governed by the board. There is a separate policy because, if we don't get these programs, and let's face it, coming out of COVID, it remains to be seen how the complexion of our provincially and federally based services will be in another 2 years' time. So I think that, with every week that goes by, it's responsible for our agency to be prudent and to be accountable. So at this particular time, when I talked to our independent auditors, we have been focusing on achieving $700,000 in that program reserve to be able to cover those material costs. I mean, that number's probably going to go up, right? This is a bit of a moving target. But again, that's a restricted fund, and it's what prudent charities and not-for-profits should be doing. Next slide, please. So we have a separate capital reserve. Port Cares emerged in since 2014 out of a period of long-term debt that was taken on to purchase and repair the buildings here at 92 Charlotte and 61 Nickel. There wasn't a capital reserve when I arrived here in 2014, and I arrived on June 16th, and by June 17th I knew that my #1 job was going to be putting in some sustainable processes for the financial well-being and recovery of this agency. So, if you own big buildings, you have to have you can't be going to the bank to replace your roof. You can't be going to the bank when the floor collapses in one of your areas. You have to have, if you're going to be into ownership at a business level, you need to have a reasonable reserve. So part of creating a reasonable reserve on the capital side of it is that back a couple of years ago, we mapped out asset replacements to 2031. So I can tell you what year the windows have to be replaced, and the $100,000 flat top roof, if it hasn't gone up, well, it has gone up, that price, when that has to be replaced. So, the important thing here is to have a restricted capital reserve that can cover replacement costs, because it's not necessarily a good business model to go to the bank chronically for your capital requirements. Right now, our capital reserve target is 1.5 million. Again, when we work with the auditors through the next audit, that figure is a moving target. It's likely going to go up, right? Because the cost of replacement is going up like lightning. So next slide, please. So, to sum it up, reserves plus stewardship equals sustainability. Reserves plus stewardship, sustainability. Sustainability is critical going forward, particularly as we work our way out of what we currently face. And so it becomes a very real question. This is not a dramatic statement. This is a very real question. What would the community do without Port Cares? Next slide. I don't know. I don't want to, at least again, as the agency's senior staff person, I don't want to leave the community, nor do I personally want to leave the agency with that hanging over our head. We have to have the mechanisms that are sound accounting business principles in place, because we've got people to serve. I've cut out some headlines. They're very, very real headlines. It took Port Cares after years and years and years on some very horrific, absolutely horrific circumstances in this community to bring that to light and to bring about protection and justice. And again, I put this up here because you will be hearing about this as the courts work their way through this case in 2021. With the tragedy, with the terrible Christmas fire from 2016, with the work that, again, we had over 500 families come through for Christmas presents last year. These were people that we didn't necessarily see in the food bank, but these were young moms and dads that are just trying to get by. And again, that kind of family support, was absolutely vital to them, and made their kids, equitable with the other kids in school. So there's real value into taking a prudent and a business-focused model into a charity. And in fact, I was the chair of the Ontario Trillium Foundation, a provincial organization. I chaired the Niagara Grant Review Committee at a time when, organizations like Port Cares, the view was starting to turn from how agencies like the Trillium Foundation would fund. Larger philanthropic organizations now require not-for-profits and charities to have strong business models. They are not going to fund organizations that are getting by on the skin of their teeth. They want to bring value to their philanthropic dollars. So again, important to have all these pieces in place from a business perspective. Next slide, please. It's interesting as we come out of the U.S. election, but this is a comment from the 44th President of the United States, a humanitarian and a visionary. And again, if you look at some of this, that if poverty is a disease that infects the entire community in the form of unemployment and violence, failing schools, and broken homes, then we just can't treat those symptoms in isolation. We have to heal that entire community. I think this is a really important perspective to understand our community and to understand the value of the work that is done to give people the opportunity to have a better future. So I think that's it for my comments. I would gladly entertain questions about the reserve, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to make my comments this evening.
Great, thank you, Christine, for taking us up on our invitation to come and speak on this issue. I'll go to online members first. Any council members online have a question? Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Christine. Christine, thank you so much tonight for coming tonight and giving this all to council so that they have a better understanding of exactly where Port Cares sits. And I do want to say that as someone who's worked in the community for more than 30 years and certainly have spent a lot of those years working alongside of many of you at Port Cares, I do know that the work that's being done today is essential and it needs all the help it can get. And we as a city have a social responsibility to do what we can. So I thank you for making this presentation, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Councillors in chamber, questions? Any questions? Okay, seeing none. I said we would move item 8 up the list. Councillor Bagu moves that. Councillor Danch is seconding that. The memorandum from Nancy Giles, EA to the CAO, and Mayor and Staff Liaison to the Grant Policy Committee. Recommendation of grant policy that the following donation sponsorship request be approved for a total of $4,000 to assist in providing services at the Reach Out Center. Any questions with regards to that? Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Initially, when this came to council, and I looked it up, all I could find was the 2018-2019 financial statement for Port Cares in the online. This afternoon, I got the other information regarding the Reach Out Center budget, and I know the grant committee, they do a fine job. They do a great job. I have no problem with the Lions donation whatsoever. I'm hoping that goes through, no problem. But with Port Cares, with the grant committee, if there's a need, you get the money. And I don't see the need of Port Cares. Actually, in their 2019-2020 actual budget, they have a surplus of $1,860 surplus. So to me, if there's no need for the $4,000, why are we going to give them the $4,000 as a grant when it clearly shows there's no need? And Christine's presentation was great, but I would have loved to hear some success stories. For the way she makes it sound, there is no success stories at all with Port Cares. It's all negative, helping people just eat and stuff like that, get addiction help. So, let me just see here. If something changes in the future at Park Cares, I have no problem giving him support, Mr. Mayor. But at this time, when we do vote, I politely request that the grant application for Port Cares be voted on separately and with a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
We're only voting on that this evening, Counselor. That's all we're voting on.
Oh, on the agenda there, it had the Lions Club still on there.
Well, we passed that last meeting.
Okay.
Or a couple meetings ago.
Yeah.
So this was the only item that came forward from that, from the grant policy committee that wasn't passed. Any further questions? Mark, any further? No?
I'm
Okay.
good, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Clayliff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Christine, I don't know if you can hear me. Is this funding just to go into the reserve budgets, or is there a particular project that you're working on? I know that you did the raffle that was done. I know it was very successful. Are you just, as I said, you talk a lot about the reserves and building them up for the 6 months in case you need it. Is that what this money is for particularly, or is there something else that you're planning to do with it?
Christine?
Let me explain. So I was asked to come to council to explain the reserve policy. So thank you, Councillor Bagu, for bringing up further information. I could have presented that and saved your confusion. This is not about the reserves. Let me be clear. Every year, to fund charities operate on fundraising and donated dollars. The Reach Out Center is the charity division of Port Cares. Every year, I have to find $260,000 to $270,000 in fundraising money or donations to run that operation. Okay? So this year, why it's so critical is because 7 months ago we got hit with the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, we couldn't do any fundraising. Where are we getting the money to run that operation? We're getting it through generous people who've been kind enough to donate. We're getting it through some emergency grants from the federal government. And we're getting it through grant applications like the one to the Hydro Fund. What comes out at the end of the year in the surplus is the surplus from the business operation. So I'm not funding, not whatsoever, not one red penny of the surplus through the donated dollars. I'm funding the surplus through the business operation by earning every single one of these white hairs on my head by being a prudent business operator. So I can appreciate that if sometimes you have to be a CPA to understand these statements, but I want to be clear, and you can feel the emotion in my voice because I really do take it personally when information is somewhat skewed. And again, we're running an absolutely A1 organization here, and you want to talk about success stories. I would have been more than willing and available to present a number of success stories. I mean, these people have value. The people that we help have value. We're working with generations of people that, the grandkids of families that they just evaporated back in the 70s and the 80s. So, this is a community responsibility. It's not just Port Cares. I hope you feel the passion in my voice. I hope you understand more clearly what we're doing. And again, none of this money serves the reserve. This grant application serves the ongoing operations. If we don't have the ability to fundraise or get donations, I make the choice to shut it down. So that's the bottom line. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Councillor Clayliff. You're all set. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Christine, for coming and the excellent explanation. I think you've nailed a couple salient points, Christine, that leads to not only the potential misunderstanding here at council when this is one level removed from the grant committee that has the opportunity to do the deeper dive in looking at your financials. And I just wanted to ask you, because I think that tonight you've explained this differential between the Reach Out Center and the Port Cares general budget. Having said that, I think you could understand how when we look at some of the numbers on the Port Cares side, notwithstanding that, you know, they're not going out the back door or anything like that, but when you look at certain aspects of the financial statements, you know, excess revenue over expenses, 253,000, you know, the ability to put that 100,000 in that capital reserve and raise that. It's easy to look at the Reach Out Center application as under the auspices of Port Cares, yet there is that carve out for reasons that you've well enunciated tonight. I just wanted to ask you a particular question about in the application, question 8, and I don't expect you to have it in front of you, but just the one paragraph, I'm wondering if you could fill in this blank. You've talked about fundraising and grants and donations. And I think more for the general public, if the answer to question 8, which what is the overall outcome that you hope to achieve through your initiative? And the answer is this grant would assist Port Cares in filling part of the financial gap created by the lost fundraising opportunities. In Port Cares' annual report for the 2018-2019 fiscal year, revenue from fundraising events represented $113,674 of the approximate $246 in funding used for operating the Reach Out Center annually. So could you explain that differential then between the 113,674 and the 246?
Christine?
Yeah, the 113, so the 113, again, this is timing now, right? So the 113 now is completely evaporated. That was the fundraising event money. So our auction, which I'm just writing the notice today, right? That would bring in about $60,000. Our, you know, our different events, our third-party events, all of that revenue is gone because of COVID. So the 246 is the total. So the rest of that revenue for 246 would come from donations. I think, you know, if you hear, you know, Leon's Furniture, you know, donated $10,000. I had another anonymous gentleman show up with $5,000. You know, it's through the donations and grants that get you from the 113 to the 247 and change. So that's where that gap is. That I'm not sure. I can't remember. I think one of Amanda Upper, our supervisor at Reach Out Center, would have written the the grant application to the city. So I think I'm not sure if are there any other numbers in there you want to run by me, because I'm pretty good at remembering on what they all are. But that's where the gap is, Councillor Bruno, is that right now, like we're working really hard to through grant applications and through the 50-50 lottery. That's what we moved really fast to do that, to close that gap of the 113 for fundraising, because this community, I would be the last person to pound on the doors of this community to say, please, you know, we need you to give us more than what you've already given us, because it's a community has got a capacity to give. I mean, we've, you know, again, for all those demographics I identified. So I mean, if there's a grant application out there that, you know, we qualify for, I'm going to go after it, because we need to keep the services running. You know, again, you know, it's just part of the pivot with COVID. We've done really well. I mean, you know, making the move on the 50-50 lottery, it was a gamble for a gambling operation, but you know, we did it because, you know, we're passionate that we want the service to continue, and we're desperate. This is not an easy go at the best of times. Never mind now, because the costs of operations have gone up as well. So yeah, so it's the real impact. You know, would I have come to the hydro for funds for just a general operating grant if there wasn't a COVID outbreak? The answer is no, I wouldn't have.
Councillor?
But because, you know, what we're facing and how long we're going to face it.
Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Christine. That last part, I think, certainly did help in that explanation. Just one last question, if I could. Based on when there's that gap, so you might understand it because this is the charitable end of Port Cares, or a charitable entity within the operation of Port Cares, and maybe that's the wrong phraseology. But I'm just wondering, in that extra 100,000 that you've put in the program continuation reserve, so is it fair to say then that even if there was a shortfall in the reach out center for lack of fundraising or COVID, et cetera, that even the board can't use that that reserve fund because of the fact that the Reach Out Center is inside that charity? If you could just explain that for us.
Christine?
Yeah, the program reserve, so again, those severance costs, the wind down costs, that would, the board can only use that program reserve for those purposes. Those monies stay in perpetuity, you know, for that purpose. So yeah, so does that explain it? So they can't take that money and say, hey, you know what? We want to build an addition onto 92 Charlotte because we think that that's a great idea. They can't use the money for that. It has to stay in that fund. These are all, again, you know, compliant with Canada Revenue Agency standards for charities. Registered charities have the highest standard of compliance. So again, you know, that sits in policy. It cannot be changed. It can only be changed by the corporation membership. But again, it has to be compliant with CRA.
Councillor?
Thank you. You know, that answered that very clearly. So just in summation then, to maybe bring it down to its lowest common denominator here. So Port Cares itself cannot, whether it has any other surpluses, fund the Reach Out Center.
Christine?
From a business model itself, no, because if we're working with provincial programs, right, and regional programs, so the contract I have for Early On, I can't take my funding grant from Early On and use it at the Reach Out Center. Everything's got a balance, right? I have to, you know, it's almost like having 6 different corporations under one umbrella. So I can't do that. I cannot take our business operation contracts and say I'm going to take 10% of Early On, 10% of Employment Ontario, and 10% of Youth Justice through the Ministry of Children's and Community Services and fund the Reach Out Center. No way. That can't happen that way. Where we pick up, where we have a tremendous advantage is that we offset some of the, you know, some of the other costs. You know, in the administrative side, the Reach Out Center doesn't get charged anything for those services. So we keep the Reach Out Center costs supported by just funding those core roles, right? So I don't get charged into the Reach Out Center, but I work for the Reach Out Center in the work that I do. That's where we pick up the benefit, and that's why we have the nimbleness and the flexibility to operate such a, you know, such a breadth of family support programs. That's how we're supporting the model through the business side. It's really quite innovative that you get that, you know, you get that cluster of services that you're not having to, you know, we can carry the HR costs, we can carry the administrative costs on the business side, which supports the charity side of the house.
Councillor?
Yeah, that's very good. Maybe I didn't explain myself as clearly as I should have, Christine. I meant not those individual entities like that are that are program driven, that are given grants from things. So I understand your ability to leverage, the staff there to do that, and I think it's very innovative, and I think it's damn good leverage. It's pretty damn good. What I was more asking was the cash in Port Cares, whether it be reserve or operating, not those entities like early childhood and the mandated programs that have to stay compliant. If they're in the general operations outside those business units, can Port Cares funding be used to support Reach Out?
Christine?
Well, all the charity dollars, all the donation dollars, all of that, it all goes to Reach Out. It doesn't come into the other side of the operation. So anything that is, again, all that charity side goes to Reach Out Center and not into the contract side of the house. So that's, in terms of the reserves, the reserve surpluses come from the business operations, not the charity side. It's a question for accounting. I think if we could, we would, but I don't believe we can. So I think I understand what you're saying. You're asking me to take these surpluses and just carry them into that business unit. Did I get that correct?
Yes, outside those business units that you can't do that because there's covenants on it, right, from the government.
Yeah,
if it's
absolutely.
That's exactly what I meant.
Thank you,
It's the first time I've been posed with this question, and again, I think if it were something that in the course of the 6 years that I've been here that I'd speak to our auditors. I mean, I'm not an expert in tax law, so and on that side of the house, but we generate the surplus off the business operations. We operate the Reach Out Center as its own unit as a charity. We leveraged, as you mentioned. So I would have to explore it with the auditors, but again, not having the full knowledge of tax and Revenue Canada obligations. I apologize, Councillor Bruno. I can't truly give you a clear answer to that, but I can seek one out.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors online, any questions to item 8? Councillor Demeray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, through you, to those members who are sitting on the grant committee, I think maybe the rest of council could be enlightened by hearing just how many times grants are given to people or to entities asking for the grants who happen to have surpluses. Many times, and actually it happens on an annual basis for one that has to do with canal days. These things happen all the time. So I'm kind of confused as to why this is a relatively small grant compared to the rest of them, why there's this much scrutiny, but maybe it's because some councillors are not aware of what goes on with the granting committee. But possibly, Councillor Bruno, you've been on in the past, and again now, maybe you could explain to the rest of council just how many times these kinds of things do come forward and are granted.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno, you want to enlighten us on that?
Sure. I think it's about the scale and how one is looking at the audited financial statements. So in most organizations, they're not going to, the expense and revenue isn't going to line up to the exact dollar, but really it's a feel for when you look at it you really have to make a judgment as, how big is big. And so I would think, most of the financial statements that we look at put money in reserves and warranted to be put in those reserves. I think when you get into a bigger organization and you have all these business units, but it comes under the umbrella of one name, you don't necessarily know the nuances of, as Christine's explained tonight, of how the Reach Out Center is charitable and it's a business unit. Business unit's probably the wrong word, but it's a unit inside the umbrella of Port Cares. And so I think a lot of folks, and probably those furthest away from it, see it as Port Cares and see the financial statements of the whole organization, not understanding the nuances that Christine has explained tonight. So most of them, to answer your question, most of them do have some small reserves, but they don't have the multiplicity of this in a charity with inside an umbrella one. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Demeyer?
No, it's okay. I wanted the councillors who weren't familiar with the way the granting committee works to understand that this is not an uncommon thing to happen at all.
Thank you, Councillor Demery. Any other councillors online wish to ask a question on item 8? No further questions here? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Was it asked for?
I think Councillor Bagney asked for a recorded vote.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll have, Madam Clerk, do you want to go through this, please?
Good evening. Through the mayor, I will now be conducting a recorded vote. So as I say your name, please state your vote, and I will state the result at the end. Councillor Bagney.
No.
Councillor Beauregard.
In favor.
Councillor Bodnar.
Yes.
Councillor Bruno.
Yes.
Councillor Danch.
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Desmarais.
Yes.
Councillor Clayliff.
Yes.
Councillor Wells.
Yes.
I just want to clarify that Councillor Clayliff did say yes as well, just her microphone.
Yes.
Didn't work for a moment. And Mayor Steele.
Yes.
So that's 8 in favor and 1 against, and the motion carries.
Great. Thank you, Council. And thank you again, Christine, for coming out this evening.
Great. Thank you, members of council. I appreciate your diligence and truly will bring value to this grant.
Okay, we'll go to councillors' items. Staff responses to previous councillor inquiries. In the chambers, I have the CAO. Mr. Louie?
Sure. Through your worship to council, I have 2 responses from issues that came up at previous council meetings. During the last council meeting, there was some discussion about outreach services, getting some assistance for homeless individuals in the city. I did learn, or I guess I was aware that staff use a internal email address at Regional Community Services to report cases where a person is using or sheltering themselves at a municipal facility, a park, a building, sometimes even in the front entranceway of City Hall. Staff are able to report that to a regional service that's monitored at daytime hours, and an outreach worker is sent to help give the services that the individual needs to get shelter and other access to services. The region did ask that anything outside of city facilities, that contact from council members or from members of the public go through 211. 211 is a number that you can phone for Community and Social Services Helpline. Do you want me to wait? Okay. Community and Social Services Helpline that can give, is monitored 24 hours, which is better than that email address. There's not always outreach services 24 hours, but it does expand beyond 4:30. But that number is monitored 24 hours, and it's where we can get the services that a person needs to those individuals in our community. So on any cell phone or landline telephone, just press 211 and you'll be connected with that support line. I would take questions on that, but I can also move on to my second item.
Go ahead.
Second item, I want to say one more thing about that, and I forgot, it's in my notes. I did have a chance to meet face-to-face with Staff Sergeant Rom DeGidio today. The mayor was in the meeting, and I'm sure you're going to hear more about that. But at that particular meeting, I did ask what the role is for the Niagara Regional Police when we encounter homeless individuals or individuals in need in our community. The staff sergeant did advise that they're more than willing, they're more than ready and prepared to help with safety issues, to help with criminal activity. They will respond if there's an emergency. Please call 911. But he advised himself that 211 is the best call for homeless individuals in our city. So even the Niagara Regional Police, who are willing to help, are not the most suitable organization. The outreach workers from 211 are trained to provide the best level of service. Questions, some discussion on distributing some notices for trailers that were parked in driveways before the deadline to move trailers out of driveways by bylaw officers. They were delivered the first few weeks of October, and some were delivered on Thanksgiving Monday. There was a question from council, did that accrue overtime to the city? And I said I would find out if it was a regularly scheduled shift or if it was overtime. That was a regularly scheduled shift. We still have 3 bylaw officers working. 2 are all year round bylaw officers. 1 is a special position that we've kept on from summertime, a student type position that we've kept on due to COVID. The city is the enforcement agency or assisting police in enforcing the orders the province has in place around COVID precautions, and having officers scheduled 7 days a week helps us to make sure we have coverage when those calls come in to complain about gatherings or masks not being used in indoor locations. It also helps us as an employer to keep our workers separate. So rather than having 2 workers doing the same job in the same place 5 days a week, we now have them separated. So they each work 4 days. There's an overlap day, and the 3rd worker, who's a student, who's not a permanent full-time employee, is spread out among the 7 days of the week. So a worker was scheduled for his regular shift on Thanksgiving Monday.
Great, thank you, Mr. Louis. Other staff members online, Mr. Shapowski.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, thank you. I just have a couple of items for council tonight. At the last council meeting, council brought forward requests for truck signage along Highway 58 and the reinstallation of the Highway 58 Service Club sign. I wanted to let council know that the initial contact has been made with the MTO to start the process on both of these items, and we will progress forward to see this to completion. I just have one other second item here. Just an update regarding the new parking signage on West Street was requested at the last council meeting as well. And we wanted to let council know that the signs are currently being made and are planned to be installed over the next week. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shapowski. Ms. Gregg.
Good evening, members of council. I wanted to provide an update with regard to an inquiry that was made at the last council meeting. With regard to recyclables on West Street, I have confirmed with staff that recyclables are collected once a week on the day of collection in each area. And on West Street, it is on the Wednesday of each week. So our waste receptacles are collected on the Monday and Friday, with recyclables being collected on the Wednesday of each week. And we are currently monitoring, because of the lovely weather that we're experiencing at the moment, over the weekends.
Great, thank you. And Ashley, just pass on to your staff on the weekend with regards to the overwhelming abundance of tourists and locals using our restaurants and cafes along the promenade. Your staff was very quick to respond to empty the overflowing garbage pails because of so much use, so that was great.
Just on that.
Yep, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Ashley. Ashley, you mentioned that about the recyclables and that pickup date. We had an issue of recyclable bins overflowing by the hospital and Lakeview Park, the road to the ramp there. Come to find out that that part is regional. Just in your last words there, is the recyclables then picked up solely by the regional on the promenade?
Ms. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. They are collected by the region of Niagara. It is once a week in accordance with the collection date of the particular area of the city. So yes, it is collected by the region of Niagara.
Councillor?
Just one other question. If our bins over time are not keeping pace with the level of recycling that tourists and those walking along the promenade do, how do we handle that if they're overflowed? I'm hoping that our staff, if it was overflowing, would at least pick it up, or is there a default position if those are overflowing and it's Friday and the region doesn't come around till Monday? Understand we're doing the refuse waste, but if a recyclable setup there is overflowing, is that for us to provide more capacity, or would we at least take care of the immediate problem that's there?
Ms. Gregg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Bruno. Yes, we have on occasion and when required supplemented the collection. So in that instance, if there is an instance where there is recyclables that need to be collected and it is on an off day when we're not experiencing collection from the region, staff are certainly cognizant of that, and we pick up that and then later remit it to the region of Niagara.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Councillor. On this issue? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, is that the same for the garbage part of the recycle bin?
Ms. Gregg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bagu. If I understand the question correctly, the refuse is collected by the city of Port Colborne. So depending on the location that you're referring to, right now I'm referring to the promenade location where garbage is collected on the Wednesday and the Friday and then monitored over the weekends. And so we are collecting the refuse on those days. Certainly, though, if there is a specific area that you're looking for, I'm happy to look into the dates of collection and report that back to council.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may want to have somebody drive down the promenade tomorrow morning and empty the overflowing garbage sections of the recycle bins. They've been overflowing all weekend. Thank you.
Okay. The recycle bins are a regional issue, so.
The garbage in the recycle bins.
Oh, people putting garbage in the recycle bins.
Mr. Mayor, there's two sections of a recycle. One's recycle, the other one is garbage. But what I'm saying is the garbage is overflowing.
Garbage side is overflowing. Okay. All right. Okay. Ms. Gregg, you'll look after that tomorrow if it hasn't been looked after today?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, I will.
Good. Thank you very much. Any other staff member? Seeing none. Councillors, issues, inquiries. I'll start online this week. Councillor Danch.
You know what, I was going to say nothing, but why would I do that? I'm getting constant badgering from one of the downtown merchants there about the continued parking on Clarence Street, West Street, Charlotte Street, of the vehicles that are there all day long. And if I had nothing else to do, I was going to go snap some pictures and, you know, this brown pickup truck or that black truck or whatever, there every day, all day long. And I don't know if bylaw could, you know, have a walk down the street and maybe take a look, because I'm getting questioned on this quite regularly, and I probably should have brought it up earlier, but if bylaw could, I'd appreciate it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Danch. I will touch base with bylaw enforcement this evening, and I'll make them aware of the situation. And I'll report back to council.
Thank you. All set, Frank? Okay. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of matters. One I had actually spoken with you about at our budget meeting, and that is the Committee on Electoral Matters. And I've received a few calls about it. That's why I just want to make sure that we get it out there in the public. I'd just like staff to be able to come back maybe at our next meeting and give us some kind of timeline for when that committee will be formed, for how long it will have to do its business, just so we can make sure we've got that taken care of and in time to be able to put it in place for the next election period. That's one.
Well,
And,
I'll let the clerk
sorry.
answer that first.
Okay.
Ms. Lapointe?
Yes, through the mayor, I intend to put that committee together in the new year, beginning in January. It will be a more condensed committee. It won't be over the entire year. We did a number of things. You're going to hear a presentation tonight from KPMG. We had them look at some aspects. We're having an HR review of pay for council, just some internal items being done, and then that committee can review them and then also get input from the public or anything else they want to do. So we're working on it. The committee portion just hasn't been initiated yet.
Councillor Demeray?
Okay. Thank you very much. I just, there are members of the public who are just getting anxious because there is a very definite timeline that this must be completed by in order to be able to be enacted for the next council period. So yes, I'll be able to tell them that this will actually get going in January then, and that will make them quite happy, I'm sure. My other item has to do with the memorandum of understanding that has been signed, and considering that and the possibility of great changes, especially affecting Ward 2, it's, people are questioning whether or not we're doing any visioning exercises. What's going to happen to them? People now want to know what's going to happen, and I know we don't have an answer to that really, but I do think the idea of having some visioning exercises could be very important, and just so that council has a good idea of the possibilities for what may be happening and what kind of plans we want to put in place. We need to keep control of this, obviously. So possibly staff could take that and come back with some ideas for some visiting sessions or some work to be done on that at the next meeting.
Mr. CAO, can you take that forward with Mr. Long and come back to council with that?
Yeah, through your worship, I can definitely make that happen. I can't say it'll be the next meeting of council. On Monday, we have a corporate leadership team meeting, and I can talk to some of the folks there and see, or Tuesday morning, we have senior management meeting and see what we can bring forward to council.
And we do have a presentation by Mr. Hamilton from HOPA on the 16th, correct, Madam Clerk?
That's right.
So that'll probably give us a start, Councillor. We can go out from that and how we can move forward with that. Is that all right?
Okay, that would be helpful. I just I would like to keep the ball in our court because we need to keep control of it. So just some dates, maybe a date for a visioning exercise or some kind of meeting where we can actually discuss what direction do we want things to go in, what do we see happening for our people, and obviously it's our city. So and I'm really very happy that all of this is going to go on with HOPA, but I think we still need to be in the driver's seat. So possibly we could get something moving. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councillor. We'll work on that. Councillor Bodnar?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Councillor Beauregard?
Thank you, Your Worship. Today it was brought to my attention that there was some turkeys along Valley Health and Wellness Center in the bushes over there that have attacked a resident or were aggressive towards a resident who frequents that area. This is the second time that's happened. And I'm just wondering if you or staff can provide, an answer as to how to potentially take care of this, and whether or not the city can be involved or if other agencies have to get involved. So that's my question.
You're talking about in the wood lot that's in the park?
Yes, I think it's the woodlot, and then across from there's Augustine Farms, and I think these turkeys frequent that area. They cross the road there too.
Christmas is coming soon. Councillor Wells, you might have some insight on this. Thank you.
Yes, your mayor. There are two turkeys that are taking up residence in the valet field, actually opposite the valet center, and they do tend to be attracted by people in the area. I've had them follow me for over a quarter of a mile.
They weren't vicious or attempting to attack me or anything like that. They just seemed to follow me along like puppies. But they are there, and they do frequent onto Highway 3 as well, in front of my home. So I don't know if they've got an attraction to me or not, but you can actually reach out and touch them. That's how close they get to you.
Holy moly. Mr. CIO.
Wow, there's so much here. Through your worship to council, and maybe Councillor Wells could be the Pied Piper of turkeys who will lead them back to from whence they came. If that doesn't work, we do actually, this is our new citywide software in action. We did receive a service request today about the turkeys. I don't know, so our software, as was described here, goes from service request to work order. That's how we get from the resident to the eventual conclusion of whatever the issue is. I can't say what it is now, but I'll talk to staff in the morning and see if there's some kind of a humane relocation potential here. I mean, these are wild animals. It sounds to me like the animals are being wild. And I mean, people should avoid them if they can. It sounds like they're pursuing the people based on these stories, but please stay away from wild animals. And if I can work with staff on some kind of a humane relocation, we'll make that happen and report back to the next council meeting.
Well, I'm sure there's some ministry rule that we have to follow, so.
Yeah.
Good. If you can keep Councillor Beauregard up to speed on that one?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Beauregard, any more questions?
No, that's all. Yeah, just keep me up to date, and I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to start to my right inside the chamber this evening. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one item. I shared the item with various parties on the weekend. It's in regards to truck traffic on Brookfield Road. And the truck traffic is a result of fill being brought into a farmyard for remediation of their soils in the yards. But the trucking has caused problems to Brookfield Road in the past, and we've had to have it fixed and repaired, and the damage is continuing. There is drag out and material being dropped onto the road, which is causing some of the residents in the area some problems with their vehicles as far as keeping them clean and tidy. I believe Scott has looked into some avenues on this. So through you, Mr. Mayor, if Scott could give us an update on that.
Mr. CAO.
Sure, through your worship to council, I appreciate Councillor Wells bringing the issue to our attention the last few times he's emailed. He's copied a number of staff and council members, and we've been looking at solutions. It is a fact that the city's site alteration bylaw limits how a person can change the lay of the land at their property. For example, digging ponds, building berms, raising the level of the grade based on importing topsoil or lowering it by taking away topsoil. It's all governed by the city's site alteration bylaw. Site alteration permits are required to do many of these things. Most of them are permitted and they're done as long as it's done with a permit. However, our city site alteration bylaw exempts agricultural use. So properties that are agricultural in nature have a built-in exemption. Councillor Bodner's motion, which I think is before council as a bylaw tonight, I think the words were to have a moratorium on the acceptance of new permits. So even this moratorium doesn't particularly help us with this issue because it's a use or an activity that's permitted as of right. A permit is not required for agricultural uses. So even that won't forestall this from happening. That leaves us in a situation where we don't know the quality of the soil that's being imported to agricultural uses. We don't have an avenue for restoring damage to roads and so on because of those agricultural uses. I have taken that to legal for some legal advice. We are looking at an alternate way to make sure that the community is safe, that the soil that's brought in, even for exempt uses like agriculture, can be monitored, and again, some kind of a framework where damage to municipal property, such as roads, from the hauling of these materials can be recuperated. and not be repaired at the expense of taxpayers. So I will bring some, I promised Councillor Wells earlier verbally that I would do so, and I will make sure that all of council is included in that legal advice that we received from the municipal solicitor.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Scott. My concern on this one here is not so much that we're bringing the soil in, is that, as Scott said, the quality of that material. And we know that through the fall of last year, there were a number of problems in Hamilton, West Lincoln, and Waterdown where the similar activities were happening. But the material being brought in was contaminated on those sites. So a little bit of action on the front end of this could save us a lot of headaches in the end.
Councillor, you're quite correct. I was away at that meeting, so I wasn't able to add my 2 cents worth in, other than Councillor Bodnar and I did have a number of discussions prior to him bringing it to council. But with the West End, and I've had a number of conversations with the mayors and also at our agricultural committee, is the fact that in the West End of Niagara, companies were coming in buying farms just to use them as depots for, in their cases, contaminated soil, which we've seen before. So, you know, we don't want to stop our agricultural committee from continuing to work, but I think we got to make sure that our rules are in place so that if Joe Blow comes into Port Colborne and buys a huge tract of land just to store some type of soil we don't know a lot about, you know, we need those protections. So I would ask staff, you know, I know we are dealing with this tonight, but as we move forward, if we want to speak to Lincoln, West Lincoln, and Grimsby, just to see how they dealt with their farming community on this. Because it is a fine line. My understanding, this gentleman is raising his wetlands in his property where he's trying to farm. So, but you do bring up a good point, Councillor Wells. Especially if there is damage to municipal property, there should be some recourse, no matter who's doing the damage. Or cleaning up the road, if we have to send our road sweeper out there, somebody should be paying for that. So I'm glad you brought that up. Anything further?
No, sir. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno? Thank you, Councillor Bruno. You don't have anything tonight?
I'm not sure what you're thanking me for. I have 3 items tonight. One, just a reminder, I had asked if, I believe you were having a meeting, Mayor Steele, with the Seaway, and it was in regards to the concept of signalization at King and Killaley if the bridge was up, and I'm wondering if there was, if you've met and had an outcome.
Yes, the CAO, Mr. Louis, Strategic Projects, Mr. Long, and I had a Zoom meeting last week with Lisa Allen and help me here, Scott, with Bruce Hodgson. Sorry, I had so many Bruces in the marine industry today. Believe me. And we had that meeting. We did bring that up to them. That's something they're going to have their technical staff look at. We know in the past there was some technical reasons why it couldn't be done at that time, but obviously we're in a different age now as far as how wireless can work with this, so they will be coming back to either the CAO or Mr. Long's office with regards to what moves forward with that.
Great. Well, that's great. I have another kudos for the Seaway, and I want to ask both the CAO and Acting Director Steve Shapowski for a big shout out and a thank you to our drainage superintendent, Alana Vanderveen. It's just come to my attention that that whole drainage area from the new water tower at Barrack Road cuts under Barrack Road as you get towards the end of it and meanders through that end field under the railroad track, picks up the regional Seaway plant, the ditch from Thurston's, and empties out into the weir. Alana's been and staff there and equipment operator used to work for the Seaway, have been right on top of this, pushing the Seaway to provide funds for the clean out of that outfall, which is some 40 plus years that it hasn't been cleaned, and it's now going to be. in approximately 4 weeks with her staff. And the Seaway is, we're going to be invoicing the Seaway. And then I think Ms. Van der Veen is going to embark on seeing if that can't stay maintained by making it a drain. So I just want to say that, you know, the idea of unlocking a 40-year blockade with some dedicated work and staying on top of it is music to the ears of those 8 or 9 residents on the end of Barrack Road. So I want to thank the Seaway and thank Elena and her staff, if you could pass that on.
We actually, just to bring that up, Councillor, I did bring that up in our meeting last week. We did thank them for this partnership because we all received the email with regards to the agreement that was made, and quite frankly, I think we're going to see a lot more partnerships with the Seaway as we move forward and after our discussion and of these type of issues that it really affects the city and Seaway property. So again, we did thank them.
Great.
And I think it was really well done, and I don't think there was a lot of real issues that Atlanta had to go through, and great meetings of the mind. So thank you, Councillor, for bringing that forward tonight.
You're welcome. And finally, this was brought to my attention just late this morning. I'd had a phone call last night and retrieved the message this morning. This is an issue that the constituent thought that perhaps either all of us or some of us would have known about, but it's a police matter in that area of Knoll, Woodside, Elmvale, Crescent, Franklin, Oast. Apparently this has been going on for a number of months. Police have been contacted on it, but it's a continuation of a group of described to me as teenage high school age students, almost equally distributed male, female, who've been in the evening hours going around, some of it pranking, you know, knocking on doors, a couple screens broken on it, elderly people coming to the door, nobody there, some vandalism pre-Halloween, post-Halloween, same level of kids. The one resident's kind of tracked to one home and spoken to the parents, but really it's become quite unnerving, sort of kind of that Thursday through Sunday on a very regular routine. These youth are just mischievous. I don't know if there's been any thefts. There may have been one, but you know, just a lot of damage to households, landscaping, a couple screen doors broken. There's sort of almost been a neighborhood movement amongst some of the folks there, sort of, you know, standing in the shadows watching these kids. They would like more police presence. If the scene groups there, you know, if the police can do the searchlight off the car. But it was very disturbing that this has gone on for a number of months. Some dialogue between some of these homeowners and the kids not gone very well. I think without some serious police presence in that area in the evening, that this could escalate. And I'm worried, and he was worried about it escalating to the point of somebody either taking the law in their own hand or there being some injuries there. So I'm wondering, we're talking about meeting with the staff sergeant there, if that could be brought to his attention and maybe see if they've had reports of it. I'd encourage those residents to call the police and get it recorded as one is supposed to, so there's a record of that. Any of us on council, if it keeps continuing, because often if you don't say anything, you'd be surprised at what we don't know. And so we look to the public to bring those kind of things forward. Don't assume that we do. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If you could just send me an email, Councillor, with the streets, so I can give those to the staff sergeant so he knows exactly the areas that are the issue right now. But as you said, we do stress that people do call the police, but also if it's kind of one of those where it's after the fact, you wake up in the morning, they've already damaged something, it may be easier to do an online report with them. So there are those two options for people. So but we'll let the staff sergeant know as soon as you get that to me, just so we can narrow down the area and he can have his team look into this.
Thank you. I was surprised at the size of the area and the number of incidents. So I'm sure they're aware of it, but they would like some more patrols and
Okay.
lights on and questioning and things like that. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Clayliff, anything this evening?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Parks and Rec, I just wanted to say a thank you. I spoke with Ashley on Friday. Because of this wonderful weather, we've had all kinds of people up at the park with grandchildren, little ones needing to use washrooms and everything else. And I put out a quick shout to her and asked her if there's any possibility of being able to get a porta potty up there. And it happened very quickly, and I just wanted to say thank you. And also, even West Street people have been saying thank you for the one that has been left there, because the weather is like summer, and it's come in very handy.
It was over 80 today, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, it was. So again, thank you very much for Parks and Rec. I know that it was going outside of the box to do it, but just because of the times and the weather, and she was just great about making it happen, so thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bagu.
Myself, like Councillor Clayliff, I just have a thank you to actually the service request system. I had a resident, an elderly, lifelong resident on Princess Street, asked for a tree planted. She was willing to pay for it, not on close to the road, following the rules. And it went through Leanne Aliberti Boltman, who went to Steve Shipakowski, who went to Dwight Earhart, who went to Dave Zabo, and it happened last week. The tree was planted, and this lady is so ecstatic, and so am I. So thank you very much, staff, for making the service system, request system work. I'm a little skeptical at first, but I see it works well, and thanks again.
Proof is in the pudding, Councillor. Thank you. And we thank staff, all of us, for that. So, seeing no further matters by councillors, consideration of items requiring separate discussion. We still have Councillor Butters with us. Deputy Clerk, you want to pull Barb in? Because we'll go to, I believe it was item 14, right, Councillor? Just make sure I'm in the right number. Yes, item 14. Welcome back, Councillor Butters. I have moved by Councillor Clayliff, seconded by Councillor Bruno. Niagara Health, in response to City of Port Colborne's resolution regarding a request for rehabilitation of helicopter pad at the Urgent Care Centre. Councillor Clayliff.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Barb. I just wanted to reach out to you, Barb, and ask you, we did receive a letter, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, from Alison Campbell, and they speak about the fact that once we became an urgent care centre, that we no longer required the helicopter pad. And as I said earlier, when I put this forward in the year, I think we require it even more now than we did at that time. And they told me that the property had reverted to become regional property. And so I'm wondering if there's some way that we could ask to have this refurbished. I did speak with the Orange staff myself, and they advised me that if the helicopter pad was put into working order, they would use it as a site for landing. And I do think that it's something we should be moving forward with. And I'm just soliciting your help at this point to see what you could do with the region.
Councillor Butters?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak with Chief Kevin Smith and anybody at the region. I guess operationally, I would wonder that because at Port Colborne it's now an urgent care, ambulances would not be going to take certainly a critically injured or ill person there. They would be directed to, a trauma center or a bigger hospital that could handle it. So I'm not sure operationally how that would work.
Councillor Butters, the thing is that when the helicopter is needed to transport the patients, the ambulance transports them to the helicopter pad. They stay within the ambulance. They are moved directly into the helicopter, and that's where the assessment's done en route from there to Toronto, to Hamilton, wherever they're being sent out to. when we when the ambulance from Port Colborne takes a patient to Welland for transport by helicopter, they don't go into Welland Hospital. They are seen and assessed and moved directly from the pad in the helicopter. And I think that people don't realize that that's what's happening. All of this is set up beforehand. I've done a little bit of research on it, and when they have a call, and these are all done throughout the province, they're done specifically through Orange. When they're called in and they decide that the person needs to be transported by helicopter, it's all set up, and they even will land in a field if they need to, if they can get close enough. But they like to have pads, especially at night. They won't land anywhere else but a helicopter pad at night. So the closest ones that we have are in Welland, and I believe there's one up the other side of Wainfleet. I think there's the next
There's
closest.
one at Dorothy Rungling Airport.
Yes, you're right. There is one there too. But when I spoke with the staff at Orange, they said that if the helicopter pad was in good repair here in Port Colborne and usable, that they would delegate, they would send their helicopters here if we had an accident here that warranted the helicopter pickup. So I just think that I look at this past summer with all the people that we had visiting, and we're a waterfront community, and all the things that go on here, people here, tourists here. We have the potential. We had a couple of very severe accidents. We actually airlifted two people from 2 accidents. Both of those people had to be sent to Welland. Neither one of them went into hospital in Welland. They were both taken directly to the pad, and they were airlifted from there. It was all arranged ahead of time, and they coordinate with the ambulances to make it happen. So again, I just think that the direction that we're moving in as a community, and a summer community especially, I think it's something that we really need to have. It's there, it just needs to be cleaned up and taken care of.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Cleliff. I will definitely poke around in that one.
I'll talk to you later about it too.
Pardon?
I said I'll talk to you later about it.
Absolutely, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Butters, I mean, you and I, as we sit in the region, we can take that there.
Yeah.
It might be an opportunity, only because it was placed where it was, because of the hospital, that if we can get the region to do this, maybe we need to look at a new location that's more central for everybody, as opposed to putting it in the furthest reaches of Port Colborne, right on the water. We all know what the winters are like along the water, but maybe it's something that we could put more central between Highway 3, Highway 58, or using that site. We know it's there, but it does need quite a bit of work. It's pretty overgrown.
Yeah, it's pretty beat up.
Yeah, so if you and I can work on that with Kevin Smith and see what their attitude is with the region, and if we need to take it to actual council, or if we can have the staff down there kind of work on this and give us an idea. Is that all right, Councillor?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Good, thank you. All right, Councillor Clayhoff?
That's great. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's great. Yeah, a central location would be perfect, even between here and Fort Erie, or Wainfleet someplace.
Correct.
Whatever.
So, okay.
Thank you.
So we are receiving this for information. There is direction towards Councillor Butters and myself. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Richard. One of the things that twigged my interest when I saw the passover of that property from the NHS to the region is that whole parking gravel area there, I'm making some clarification from you or the CAO or engineering or planning. I've always wanted to see us pursue that land becoming the city of Port Colborne.
So, Councillor, I know you want an answer, we will give it to you, but that's not the idea of this. This is the helipad. So if you want to bring that forward under Councillor's items, or we can actually, if you can call the CAO tomorrow and he can enlighten you, only because that has really nothing to do with, all we are is accepting their letter that they don't own it anymore, it's now the region. So I know where you're going with that, and I think staff have had that discussion, in fact, quite recently. So if you want to call the CAO, he can fill you in on that. Is that all right?
Sure, I was just surprised that it was passed to the region.
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. No further questions? All those in favor of receiving, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Butters, for waiting around. Okay, item 14 is done. Okay, on to item 1, moved by Councillor Bagu, seconded by Councillor Beauregard. Corporate Services Department Report 2020-173, subject KPMG Service Delivery Review Final Report. Madam Clerk, take it over.
Through the mayor, I just want to welcome Bruce Peaver to the council meeting this evening. Mr. Peaver and his team at KPMG have been working closely with Bill Myers and various city staff over the last number of months. KPMG was hired with grant funding that we were successful in obtaining earlier this year to conduct an organizational review of our service delivery within the city. The team have examined our organization and have provided a report with some recommendations on how to move forward. And going forward, you will see many of these recommendations being brought forward in the next year, tying into budget requests, strategic plan implementation, and various initiatives. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bruce to go over the report and recommendations.
Great, Madam Clerk. Bruce, welcome.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Council, senior staff, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, at least virtually. I am in my basement where I've been since middle of March, working through this pandemic. So I actually enjoyed coming to visit and work with your staff at the city of Port Colborne because it gave me a break from working at home. So anyway, what I have tonight is a small presentation to council on the results of our service delivery review. If you could flip the page to page 3. We were engaged by the city of Port Colborne to undertake a service review, and the overall goal of the work was to better understand the current suite of services and identify opportunities for improvements and greater efficiencies in the city's operations. And we did that through inventorying the different services you provide, identifying opportunities, and then advising on implementation. Next page, please. And you can see on this page that we started in early April, and we concluded our project at the end of August. And now we are presenting our final report. Next page, please. And so the outcome of the work was a series of opportunities. And the first opportunities I would like to present to council tonight are what we call strategic opportunities. And there's 3 main strategic opportunities. And the first one is to establish service levels for all the different municipal services the city provides. And what we notice is the city recognizes the need for defined service levels for each of its services, and to date that's been inconsistent on the part of the city. Staff identified the need for clear direction and less ambiguity or mixed messaging as a result of not having established service levels. So in our work with cities across Canada, and in particular Ontario, we find that this is a common observation. The second opportunity is to revise and update the strategic plan with departmental mandates and key performance indicators. So we notice that the city has recognized the need to revise and update the strategic plan, and we provided input that it should include departmental mandates and key performance indicators, or KPIs, for each department. Staff, when we were working with them, noted that there was some inconsistency and lack of understanding around these mandates and what are the KPIs for each department. And third and finally, for the 3 strategic opportunities, is to integrate the cultural strategic plans that the city has. So the city, when we were working with them, recognized that there was an opportunity to integrate the various cultural related initiatives and strategic plans that are already underway within your community. And that's going to give you an opportunity to review resourcing, which is your people, your assets, and funding, to plan and host and expand your various cultural events. So those were the top 3 strategic opportunities. If we turn the page again, and now we have the top 10 opportunities that are more operationally based or focused. And the first one is to conduct a fleet utilization study and look at refinancing how you support the fleet. So the city, like many municipalities, operates and maintains a wide variety of fleet vehicles and equipment. And maintenance is becoming increasingly complex with the pressure of upcoming replacement. A fleet strategy and utilization study could assist the city in better understanding its current operations, improve asset management practices, and enhance the planning for short and long-term financing. The second opportunity is to develop a facility condition assessment and financial plan. So the city, like many municipalities, has a large inventory of older facilities that it takes care of. And there's opportunities for greater efficiency in their maintenance and the improvement of them for accessibility. So we're suggesting that a review of your facilities, particularly given the COVID-19 pandemic. The third opportunity is to review the service delivery of GIS. So GIS is a high demand service across multiple departments of the city, and there are opportunities to review how you provide GIS services, such as through a third-party cloud-based service. If you could turn the page now. The fourth opportunity is to look at your business processes using Lean Six Sigma. Many municipalities, like many hospitals and other public sector organizations, have come to realize that a review of their business processes using a lean approach can yield substantial savings. The fifth opportunity is to review your seasonal staffing model. There are multiple seasonal positions across the city, and there's an opportunity to consult these into full-time positions, which will lead to the retention of staff, cost savings, and overall increased delivery of service quality. The sixth opportunity is to review the job classifications for outside workers and the CBA. We have found that continually reviewing your job descriptions will ensure efficient operations that are aligned with the city's objectives. And this opportunity could also provide more flexibility for the city and provide greater opportunity for staff. If you could turn the page. The seventh opportunity is to review data management and identify business intelligence opportunities. So municipalities across Canada are working on this particular matter, this issue, and they are very similar to the city of Port Colborne. So your staff identified a lack of understanding of the data that you have available and the accessibility for that data across multiple departments. And there's an opportunity to reorganize and rethink how you share data in the delivery of municipal services. Number 8 is undertake a review of overtime and resource utilization, including the backfilling with vacancies and timelines. So many departments are experiencing the need for overtime, suggesting it's time for a review to look at the root cause of this and develop an appropriate recruitment and retention strategy. Number 9 is to transition to single plow operators and review the grass cutting and snow removal service delivery model. So the city is unique in that it's still using 2 operators on a snowplow, and we also identified an opportunity for operations in the Parks Department to work in tandem on the consolidation of seasonal roles into full-time positions. And if you could turn the page. And finally, the final opportunity is around the delivery of health services and physician recruitment. The city has identified that there's an opportunity to reevaluate the mandate, the role and function of health services and the physician recruitment program. So those are the top 10 opportunities, Your Worship. And at this point, I'd be pleased to take any questions from yourself or council.
Thank you, Bruce. I'll go through council. Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Bruce. Page 37 of ours, the slide, and you've mentioned it a couple times since then, but number 5, review seasonal staffing model. And under the observation, there are multiple seasonal positions across the city. There is an opportunity to consolidate into full-time positions, which will lead to retention of staff, cost savings, and overall better delivery of services. So is that an observation that you've made, or is that a one of the built-in template requests that you need to review as part of this grant?
Bruce?
Thank you, Your Worship. To the councillor. So this is an opportunity that we observed in discussions with your staff and the approach the city takes to their staffing model. So my understanding is that you have a staffing model that depends upon temporary employees or part-time employees, and that has led to some difficulties in service delivery. And there is an opportunity to review that model and perhaps consolidate some of those positions into full-time positions in order to ensure that you have enough people at the right time for service delivery.
Councillor?
Well, I guess my concern then, Bruce, is that this seems to be a conclusion of some looking for support and backup. So in every scenario, there's more than one side to the story. So let me try and hit the nail right on the head. There may be a lot of those seasonal positions that are seasonal for very good reasons. And so I'm not so sure that when we need something, I mean, other than creating a different set of a different job in, say, the off season. So we are very much a summer destination. We have waterfront. We have a lot of students because in the summer, you know, this community is a buzz with special events. There are things that are, I would argue, more suitable to it being seasonal employment and more fits the reality on the ground. I certainly can understand that in general, one can see that, you know, full-time work certainly does help in retention, but you know, the old phrase is, you know, you don't build a church based on Easter Sunday attendance. And so if we're peaking in the summer and we can't provide corresponding work in the winter to round out a full position, I would say that's something that also needs to be looked at. And I don't know if what you're doing is maybe a review of just staff's desire. And, you know, let's face it, if I was a supervisor or foreman, I might want to have somebody that is there year-round. I think in some cases the consolidation may be necessary, in some doesn't. I just want to know that this is looked at from both aspects.
Bruce?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. To the councillor, thank you for clarifying. I actually agree with you entirely. And I needed your clarification to help me understand the point you were making. So for sure, there are positions that need to be temporary. And we're not suggesting that those positions become full-time just for the sake of being full-time. What we are suggesting is that through our discussions and our observations with staff, that there are positions that are temporary that perhaps need to be examined and consolidated. And the only way you can make an informed decision is to actually conduct a review of your current staffing model for seasonal employees, and decide which employees you really only need on a temporary basis because they're filling a summer demand, and then there are some employees that you're cycling through constantly because they're constant 12-month-a-year demand for their services. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes, thank you very much. That does. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions from in the chamber? Councillor Bagu.
No. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One question. I don't really see anything about our fire emergency department in here. Is there a reason for that, or everything's hunky-dory over there?
Bruce?
Thank you, Your Worship. To the Councillor, actually, I believe there are some opportunities that were identified, but they're going to require further study and evaluation. And I think there's also a couple of opportunities that are currently grouped as being currently underway. So they didn't make the top 10 list for tonight.
Okay, Councillor. Anything further? Anything else, Council in the chamber? Councillors online, any questions? Councillor Danch.
Thanks. Just a couple questions there. I mean, and, I'm not sure what page it was on, but you said about accessibility in some of our properties that we own. I mean, our ops center is 3 years old. Our valet health and wellness is 8 years old. You would think that everything would be in place for the accessibility, and then you're kind of like beating us up on that and saying that we don't have everything in place. I just wonder if you could explain a little bit more of that to me.
Bruce?
Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. To the Councillor, sorry. Please don't construe this as beating up. We just observed that there is an opportunity to review your current inventory of facilities, and one of the key issues facing municipalities everywhere, including Port Colborne, is the issue of accessibility. And there are a few facilities, I understand, that still need attention in this matter. And I don't think it's as serious as other cities in the province, but we were made aware that there were some requirements regarding accessibility.
Councillor? Okay. Any further questions from council online? Okay, Bruce, no more questions. Anything further?
No, Your Worship, other than to thank yourself, council, and staff for the opportunity to serve you. And it was very pleasurable engagement, and I look forward to assisting the city in the future as the need arises. Thank you again.
Great, thank you. Staff, Bill, did you have any comments on this, or you're all set?
To the mayor and to council, if there's anything I could add to this, it's that at the end of the day, for the city to have the opportunity to take advantage of a grant funding opportunity like this to have a service delivery review conducted is a great opportunity for our administration. And I think really the key here is the fact that we've had a third party come in and provide council a list of of opportunities that that have identified a need that we have as an administration, but ultimately it's a list that's been provided to you, and in the end it'll be your decision to advise staff on whether to move forward on these decisions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Myers. We will be receiving this report this evening, but Mr. CAO, next steps with this will be for staff to what?
Yeah, through your worship to council, that's a great question. We have this document and it's wonderful. A lot of efforts gone into it. And I guess the next step is how does the rubber hit the road? You will see that some of the things that are in the document and maybe in the larger document and the work that's gone into it that's not in the actual presentation will be coming back to council in the strategic plan, in staff reports, and other sort of initiatives that come forward in the budget and in the months to come. We do have sort of groups within our group. We have our senior leadership team and our senior staff group, and I think the next step is to take these items to those groups for some actual implementation. And I think, I'll take for example I think it was the 10th item out of 10 was the winter control upgrades or finding efficiencies in winter control. I know that the management over at the operations center is already looking at implementing those efficiency improvements, and that's only one of the list of them that were already on the way. So you will see this come in the work plan of the various departments and leadership groups in the months to come.
Good, thank you. Seeing no further questions, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Again, thank you, Bruce and staff.
Okay, your worship. Cheers.
Item 2, I have a mover, Councillor Wells, seconder, Councillor Clayliff, Corporate Services Department, Financial Services Division Report 2020-158. Subject, the approval of the 2019 consolidated financial statements. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Bowles, I believe he's attending on Zoom.
Yes.
Mr. Bowles, can you just identify the main findings of this result of this review by Grant Thornton, and if what action has been taken on those findings?
Mr. Bowles?
Sure. Through the mayor, I think the appendix at the back, Appendix B, identifies the Grant Thornton findings. I think one item that I think is important to point out to council is they did believe that we have over accrued or been too conservative potentially on our allowance for doubtful accounts. Grant Thornton and I had a considerable conversation with respect to that, and both determined that it was not material to adjust. The value of that difference was $111,000, so it has been left as unadjusted. I think it is important for council to recognize that. Grant Thornton also pointed out a number of segregation of control issues where they suggested that some individuals within the city had potentially too much access to certain elements of the financial system. So we have taken steps to break or eliminate those segregation of control issues going forward, and will be in full compliance with those recommendations within the next 6 weeks.
Okay, Councillor?
Thank you, Brian. I think it's important for everybody to understand that when we see opportunities for improvement, that as Brian has tried to do, is he's putting us into a continuous improvement efforts, and I believe this is one of those opportunities for us to make those improvements on these findings. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillors online, any further questions? Councillors in the chamber? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Item 4, Planning and Development Department Report number 2020-167, Subject Development Charges Bylaw Amendment. I have Councillors Bruno, Councillor Kalaleff moving that. I'll start with Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I raised this tonight just as a thank you to Dan and his staff and the Clerk's Department and Corporate Services for turning this around on a dime and getting that extension to marry up with the regional one. I urge all people contemplating building a single-family house in Port Colborne to get their application in, considering Christmas is coming and we're probably closing towards the latter quarter of the month. There's not much time left. I had the opportunity today, I called the region to see if they had released their development charges increase for January 1st. I think they just circulated it internally today. All I was able to get out of them before, obviously, I had to share it with directors and ultimately committees, was that it is going up. No number attached yet, but if you look at the couple thousand plus here and whatever it's going to be at the region, give yourself a Christmas gift if you're going to be building a house, and get into the city of Port Colborne and get your building permit in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any councillors in the chamber have a question on this? Anyone on the line have a question on this? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Item 5, Planning and Development Department Report 2020-166. Subject, Recommendation Report for Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Nyan Oil Inc., file D14-05-20. Again, Councillor Beauregard has a conflict on this. We want to note that. I have Councillor Wells, Councillor Desmarais moving this. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to, I believe, Dan. Dan, is there a, could you explain what this, how this lifting of this holding will allow them to move forward, and what's stopping them from moving forward right now with the site plan agreement? I understand and appreciate the services portion of the holding being lifted, but in particular with the site plan agreement, I'm curious as to exactly what is stopping them from moving forward by having this in place.
Before I go to Mr. Acklin, I just want council to note that Mary Lou Tanner, Scott Lemke, and Gordon Baker are here from the Nyan Oil Inc. So if you have any direct questions for them. Mr. Aquilina, do you want to answer Councillor Wells' question, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Wells. The issue is regarding the need to complete the supporting studies to then be able to determine what impacts those studies would have on the development of the site. So aside from needing those studies completed, the site plan agreement cannot come forward without knowing what those studies will require and what the impacts would be on the development of the land.
Councillor?
Through you, Mayor, to Dan, could the site plan agreement not be created and composed such that it's conditional upon those studies, and those studies would be automatically accepted into the agreement?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. Ideally, the site plan agreement reflects the actual supporting studies. There's going to be a legal agreement, so I wouldn't want to make it subject to. I would like to know the actual facts of the development to make its way into the actual agreement.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Okay. Councillors online, any further questions? Councillors in the chamber, any further questions? Seeing none. Mr. Aquilina, you're fine?
Mr. Mayor, I am fine. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I would like to thank Ms. Tanner, Mr. Lemke, and Mr. Baker for attending. We don't have any further questions for you. So this time I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? That is carried. Item 6, Engineering and Operations Department Engineering Division Report 2020-159, subject bylaw revision, speed limit change on Clowley Street East. I had asked Councillor Wells and Councillor Bruno to move that for a report from the CAO. Can we go right to the CAO? Clowley Street East.
Through your worship, I apologize. I was looking at engineering staff on Zoom ready to speak to this, and I forgot that I did ask you if I could just briefly address it, because I did have a chance, as mentioned earlier, to speak to the local staff sergeant in Port Colborne detachment about this initiative and, sort of ask the question, was there an issue or were they ready to sort of enforce the new flashing limit sign? So to understand this concept, we currently have a 40 km/h section of what's a relatively rural road. It's from 60 when you're traveling from east to west, going down to 40, and 50 from going west to east if you're towards the 40 zone. And it's 40 for a school zone, all times of day, all times of year, all days of the week. Staff are of the opinion, and this was budgeted for based on council's request in the past budget. Staff are of the opinion that sort of the permanent reduction to 40, it's not in spirit of using roads to move people and goods, which is the purpose of roads. The NRP staff sergeant advised he was in full agreement with that. He understands traffic calming, something we've talked in the council chambers a number of times. Traffic calming is important, but this was not the best way to calm traffic through this area. His suggestion, and he was in full agreement with this report, is that by using a flashing limit sign would be the best use of speed control through that area. So what we'll end up with if this report is approved is a permanent 50 km/h sign until the road goes to 60. But for the school zone, a light that flashes to tell drivers the times of day and the days of the year, so obviously excluding school holidays and summertime, when the speed limit is reduced to 40. And the NRP was in full support of that. Engineering questions, I would recommend that we ask Mr. Shapowski or Brian Kostick online, but that was the opinion of the Niagara Regional Police Staff Sergeant.
Thank you, Mr. Louis. Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those of us that have been around when this was put in, it was always the plan to do this, and when we initially did it, we didn't have the money for those flashing signs. It's been there a lot of years. I think this is long overdue, and it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just, first of all, I'd like to agree with what Councillor Bonner just said, but I'd also like to know if we do have a timeline on moving other school zones in play, or are we just going to wait and see?
Mr. Kostick?
Through you, the Mayor, to Councillor Desmarais, we currently have any plans to do the same other school zones.
Okay, thank you.
So Councillor Desmarais, this is a good item to bring up during budget time.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm writing it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Council in the chamber, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. And I'd like to thank the two councillors for bringing this forward on my behalf, and thank the CAO and Mr. Kostick for their answers and Scott's overview. This is something that other municipalities in Niagara have done quite locally. Welland, if you go to the city of Welland, majority of their school zones are done this way. And it does move traffic a lot better, especially in the summertime when schools aren't in. You're going 40 for no reason. So it is a switch up, and it does work very well. There are a couple of schools that are on either provincial roadways or regional roads. Those that are on the regional road, Councillor Butters and I can take that to the region to look at changing if at all possible. But I'm sure, based on what Councillor Desmarais said, is that this is something that we probably should look at in our budget system, where we can do our areas that are needed. Some schools are on streets where it's not a high traffic volume area, so it's not really needed, or it's on a shorter street, it's not needed, but there are a number of schools that this would work. So I'd like to thank staff for their work on this, and again, I brought this up for Scott's overview, but this is a community safety issue, and I think this council has taken that direction, that we want to keep things as safe as possible and going in the best path forward to really move traffic safely within our community, and then also working with our police department, which Scott mentioned that we have on this issue. So again, thank you. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please raise their hand. And that's carried. Item number 7 is Engineering and Operations Department Engineering Division Report 2020-136. Subject update and recommendation to complete engineering and construction drawings for City Hall. Councillor Bagu and Councillor Bodner will move that. I'll go to Councillor Bagu first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't seen the actual drawings, I guess not there, or the plans for it, but I was just wondering, it's probably not in the plan, but just for staff to be aware of, maybe because of COVID and maybe something else coming down the road, that the washrooms downstairs on the bottom floor in the public area, because it's before the counter. So to me, that's the public's washroom, technically, but I know staff do use them. But something in the future that maybe one or both could be open during certain hours of the day rather than using porta potties, which some people seem to sleep in, and other ones are dirty. And this summer was sort of pretty hard with the market in that, even if it would have been open on the market. But just something in the plans. You don't have to do a $200,000 renovation, but just to keep it in mind, that's all I'm asking, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is this your bailiwick?
Through the mayor, no, it's not, but I can take it back to staff to discuss further.
Okay, thank you. Well, I know you're involved in all this, so. Okay. Yeah, oh, we know that. Any other staff members have an answer to Councillor Bagu, or is it fine for you to wait to speak with the clerk? Is that okay? Mr. Shapowski?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bagu, we can definitely look at that during the design phases. We have taken COVID-19 into consideration. It will be an impact, and we are planning for it to be here somewhat long term. So that is under review in these drawings, and I think you're absolutely right. There are washroom issues that have appeared, and we will look for solutions with that, and we'll discuss them along with our community services team as well. So we'll definitely take it into consideration.
Perfect, thank you. Any further questions on this? Anyone online? Councillor Danch?
Thanks so much. Steve, I just wondered, are smaller minds going to be able to visualize some of the stuff? I know we had that little overview there with some, second, third floor ideas and stuff like that. Are we going to be able to see something down the road, hopefully?
Mr. Shapowski?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Danch, we can definitely make those drawings available. We do have a package, and I can send that out to council tomorrow, actually.
Okay. Okay, Councillor?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I love those things. I kind of build things every day, so that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions from councillors online? Seeing none in the chamber, Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Steve. I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Steve, but in the world of the chicken and the egg, so you got to do the design drawings, and you've got those, and then there's the tender. I'm just concerned that, do you believe everything will fit into place in that application for the actual build? As to how you'll round out a price, are you going to be able to get any quotes that'll give you guidance to put in the funding application? I'm just concerned about that, and just the time frame while COVID's on is a great time to be working while there's nobody in the building. Thank you.
Mr. Shapowski.
Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, it's something that staff's definitely worried about too. We're going to amp up our workload and try to get those prices in time for our submission for the ICIP grant. Moving forward with this item tonight will be our best case scenario at actually achieving those results. So as soon as hopefully we receive the okay on this item tonight, we're going to move forward with those designs to make sure that we have some construction ready drawings should the time not be that we're actually at the submission, but actually upon receiving approval. So that's the goal and the game plan right now, and this is going to set us up to be in the best position as possible.
Okay, great. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, raise your hand. That's carried. Item 8's done. Item 10, Township of Ashfadel, Norwood, Township of Blandford, Blenheim, Town of Lincoln, Norfolk County, Northumberland County, regarding cannabis grow operations. Moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Danch. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to this, Ward 4 probably has the most number of cannabis growing operations in the city of Port Colborne. And with that, I'm sure Mr. Bodner can contest that we tend to get a number of requests and concerns being raised about odors, about ongoings at different hours of the day, and a variety of different things. So I would like to see if our council has the appetite to join the various municipalities and also support the resolution via the cannabis production, and if possible to follow up with a resolution on that. So I guess if there is an opportunity, I would like to help work on that.
Perfect. Just before we move to Councillor Bodner, because I know he's been dealing with this for a number of years, and getting in this chair this year, I've had to deal with a number of issues in Ward 4. If I can ask the council, we'll take further questions, but there is a letter coming from myself and the Chief of Police as acting chair of the Police Services Board. The Chief and I put a letter together with regards to medical marijuana, which is actually now, based on the Chief, is the biggest black market avenue for marijuana sales in Ontario. The police no longer go to these large grow ops. They've gotten their way into these medical marijuana licenses and are growing this and selling it on the black market. So if I could ask your indulgence, if we could ask staff to receive this, if we can direct staff to receive this tonight, I will take further questions, and then bring this back along with the letter from the Niagara Regional Police Services Board and the Niagara Regional Police, and then we can deal with kind of both issues, because in reading this, it does touch the grow side, which, to be quite honest, based on what the police chief is, the statistics he gave our board at our last meeting, is the fact that the normal places, we'll look at Font Hill because they're the closest to us that have large marijuana grow ops for the retail sale, aren't an issue anymore. Those aren't the ones that are under the black market or the criminal activity. So, but if we can come back, then we as a council can move forward, go after public health at the federal level, because they're the ones really turning a blind eye to this, quite frankly. And then we can also deal on any large scale grow operations that supply to the retail. If that's okay, Councillor. I'm going to go to Councillor Bodner because I know he had a question.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I believe that this does deal with the medical marijuana issue. I'm glad you're looking into that. And I'd be okay with waiting to see what we can put together. But here's something. When you look in there, a number of these municipalities have passed what they call a nuisance bylaw. I want to know from staff, do we have something like that?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bonner, no, not those exact words, a nuisance bylaw. I can inform council that recently myself, bylaw staff, planning staff, our legal counsel, and as well with the NRP, did have a discussion, a very lengthy discussion. And in the future, there'll probably be an amendment that's going to be coming forward, dealing with tightening things up as it relates to the definition that we have currently in place. to try to have better control on things before they kind of get, I'm not going to say taken advantage of, just to be sure that we're more solid in our enforcement and opinion that these facilities that exist out there are in fact illegal under the zoning bylaw. We can't stop people from growing medical marijuana, but we can control where they can be grown and which regulations we could have in place. So that'll be something that'll be coming forward to council in the near future.
Counselor?
Okay, that's good to hear. And also, you'll notice in here that the, I think it's a township of Gwillimbury. Sorry if it's not a township, but I think it is. They actually went to court over this. I wonder if staff could just, I don't need the answer now, but I wonder what the outcome of that was. And this was to do, I believe, with the smell coming from one of these medical marijuana grow. It doesn't have to be a big one, just a small one. And Mr. Mayor, you know how that can really wreck somebody's enjoyment of their whole property. And many councilors have seen that too. But I wonder if staff could just dig in to see what the result of them going to court was, and just so we have that in our back pocket if we need it.
Okay. I think we need to formalize some direction maybe coming out of this. I'll go to the mover and seconder once we go there. I think Councillor Desmarais had her hand up. Councillor Desmarais? No?
No, I didn't.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions in the chamber? So Councillor Wells, if we can, I don't really want to refer this forward. If we can, again, receive it, because I think it's important that we do receive it, but ask staff that in coordination with the letter coming from the NRP and NRPB, SB, and with the question that Councillor Bodnar asked with some information based on, and I don't think it was Gwillimbury, I looked at the letters, but if we can find out which one actually went to court, or if it was Gwillimbury, if we can confirm that, bring that information forward so that at the meeting that the police letter comes forward, that we can really formalize, and really it's a two-prong effect because Health Canada does the health side of it. The retail side is again, based on the police chief, isn't a real issue as far as illegal activity, but it can have an issue with regards to smell and other things. So, but it is kind of two different avenues that we can go to. So if I can ask Councillor Wells to put that forward, is that all right?
Perfect.
As recommendation? Yep. Is that all right, Madam Clerk? Can you, with receiving this, we do have some direction coming out of this?
Yes, so maybe receive the items for information and direct Councillor Wells to bring forward a motion on this topic in conjunction with yours.
Okay. You want all that done at the same time? Or do you want to do one and then the other?
It's up to you, but I would be comfortable with it being in the same motion because it is the same topic and I think there's clear direction.
Okay. How do we want to word that, Harry?
A motion to direct staff to investigate into the resolutions and basis of resolutions of that they have prepared and sent out with the intent to report back to council with a input as to the letter received or generated by the mayor and the regional police. Okay.
And also in that the municipality that Councillor Bodnar brought up, we can.
So just for clarification, would this be bylaw staff? Is it the subject experts?
That would be Dan Aquilina and his staff, correct. Okay. Those online clear with that? Okay. Everybody in here clear? Any questions to that then? Okay. Staff, you're fine with this? And that'll come forward once the letter from the NRP comes forward, and then as Dan and his staff gathers other information. Okay, and we can move further from that at that time. Councillor Wells?
Just one addition to that, that we could cover both item 10 and item 11, which also deals with the marijuana, but from a retail perspective within that same premise.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Councillor Danch?
Yeah, sorry, just listen in there. Doesn't the federal government get involved with this at some point in time where we can do the best we can do in our community, but they're the ones that are going to give the ultimate decision? That's my question.
You're actually correct, Councillor. The unfortunate part about it is they're not doing anything. They're not helping our police departments in Ontario. They're not helping our municipalities in Ontario. And I think you're seeing the frustration really coming to a boiling point. And I know Councillor Bodner and the other councillors dealt with this in last term, specifically on a number of properties in Ward 4. But it has come to a boiling point. It has come to our Police Services Board. So that's why we put that letter together based on the chief and the board's conversation and the information coming through our police department. But they won't respond. They just basically turn a blind eye, specifically on the medical marijuana side. I know they've tightened the rules on the retail grow side, but again, there are still some issues, and we know those that the town of Pelham have had. And I just think that we need to let the government know our feelings on it. Because quite frankly, when you call them, because we have an issue that is impacting a whole neighborhood with regards to smell, and you don't hear back, or they try to flip you to somebody else, it's not, to me, it's not good governance. And, you know, they want to put this in place, but they don't want to follow through with the rules. And that's what's wrong here. And when people's livelihoods are being affected by this, and again, I was at a number of houses, and Councillor Bodner's been there, Councillor Wells has been there. It's not fun. And to be quite honest, if it was in my neighborhood, I wouldn't like it. So that's why we're here, to help bring this forward and get to a resolution and get the public health at the federal level to move on this, to put some teeth in the bylaws, and to, quite frankly, deal with the police on these issues in a far better way than they're dealing now. So that's really where it comes from, Councillor. So I think we've got more work to do and more more items to come forward. So again, as Councillor Wells and Councillor Bodner have stated many times, I do look forward to this coming back to us. Okay? Any further questions? Councillor Baggio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. This letter we're getting from the board and the board chairman, is it going to every municipality in Niagara, or is it just per Colborne?
No, all 12 municipalities, the region, province, federal, MPPs, MPs, we're covering the gamut through that. But it is all 12 municipalities. And we're not alone in this. Not at all, believe me. Okay, so on item number 10, to receive, and then the further motion that Councillor Wells added to this, as everybody knows. Again, Madam Clerk, you're set with that. Thank you. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's carried. Item 11, City of Clarence Rockland Re-Cannabis Retail Stores. That the resolution received from the City of Clarence Rockland regarding cannabis retail stores be received for information. Councillor Wells moves that. Councillor Kalaloff seconds it. As you said earlier, we want to tie this in with the last motion. So if we can receive this and with direction to tie this in with our last motion, Councillor, or Madam Clerk, you're fine with that?
Yes, the item about the retail is included in the last motion.
Okay. Any questions then, Councillor Wells?
No,
okay.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question on this? Okay, again, that'll come forward with the other information. All those in favor, please raise their hand. That's carried. Item 12, County of Wellington, Northumberland County, Township of Wellington North, Township of Southwest Oxford, regarding fair and accurate assessment of aggregate resource properties. I have Councillor Wells and Councillor Bruno moving that. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concerns with this one here is that when we look at the vast amount of land within Port Colborne that has been identified as a resource or an aggregate resource, that is right now zoned or use is primarily agricultural, one of the lowest tax bases of our community. what we see with this information is that that property that has been zoned as a mineral resource, being taxed as a agricultural property, is really being undertaxed. They're really not giving back to the community in a tax way that is representative of the value of that property, because some of that property that they will be utilizing or harvesting from that is will never go back there. That property may not ever be reused. It may become just vacant property, just a pit that's not been rehabilitated, or even it's rehabilitated as a lake, or hopefully something else more productive. But for the most part, they do not get rehabilitated back to something that's very productive from a tax perspective on this. I had some exchanges with Mr. Bowles in regards to this, and if I could ask him to put his opinion forward, that would be, I would appreciate that.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, having done a little bit of research on this particular issue, I think what council needs to be aware of is this property is being valued, as was mentioned by Councillor Wells, as agricultural, and this is being done across the province, and a number of municipalities, just under the concept of fairness and equitable assessment, has gone forward and said that they would like MPAC and the province to take another look at that. I think Councillor Wells has expressed quite fairly some of the reasons why that might need to take that second look at. And I've expressed to Councillor Wells that, like, my recommendation to council would be certainly that, and I would think council would want to support a fair and equitable assessment of tax. Council may wish to support this motion that was brought forward with respect to Wellington County's council, and see if it can get some additional answers or responses from MPAC and the province with respect to how these properties are being valued. I will point out to council that in doing so, I think it's important to know that there were different mechanisms to value these properties before 2016, and many of those different mechanisms did result in reassessments, arguing between MPAC and the aggregate companies, the holders. What ends up happening in those situations is sometimes you get a valuation of your taxes that goes up on those properties, and then if you get a negative announcement or negative decision, what ends up happening is the city then has to refund the taxes, and that tax then moves forward to a future year, so a future taxpayer has to pay that. So the only caution that I would have for council is that I think it would be in council's best interest if you move forward with supporting the motion, to just be aware that should a different model come forward, it would always be the taxpayer would have the still ability to appeal it. So we may have to discuss what the appeal systems are. Last comment is, in the budget that we discussed last week, we did increase our allowance for appeals going forward. So I would suggest that the city would be well positioned should we have to, discuss an appeal situation on one of these properties going forward. If there's any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Yeah, there's one other thing that Mr. Bowles had advised me, that the province in the last budget speech said that they were going to review the property assessment process. So maybe we need to wait a little bit before we would do anything in that respect, other than to support the resolution. I'll come back at a future date with a possible motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Council, I had my microphone off. I'll do that again. All those in favor of receiving, please raise your hand. All those opposed, that's unanimous. Thank you, Council. Item 14's done. I was wondering why they, oh my God, it's going to be 4-4 tie or something. Okay, we're on to proclamations. Moved by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Bodner, that January 2021 be proclaimed Crime Stoppers Awareness Month. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We have one set of minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. The minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of August 12th, 2020. I have movers, Councillors Kalaliff and Councillor Wells. Any questions to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Carried unanimously. Madam Clerk, consideration of bylaws.
There are 4 bylaws this evening, 6835-85-20 to 6838-88-20.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have Councillors Bodner and Councillors Bagu to move that. Any questions on any of the bylaws? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? None. That's unanimous. Thank you. Again, before we adjourn, I'd just like to remind everybody about Wednesday, November the 11th. The Legion will be doing their normal Remembrance Day ceremony from within the Legion to their members and dignitaries only. The public won't be attending this year due to COVID, but we'd still ask you to please stop for a moment at 11 a.m. And reflect on what those members of our armed forces sacrificed between world wars and conflicts around the world, peacekeeping. And also, if you have time, please drop a poppy at the cenotaph or even a bouquet of flowers. Other than that, again, Council, thank you, and we are adjourned.